Okay, I'm James Landrum, and this is my wife, Judy Landrum, Judy Hughes Landrum. Judy and I began dating in late 1951 when we were just 15 and 14. And we dated through high school and then 1 year of college. And in 1956, on June 2nd, we were married. And we'll celebrate our 59th wedding anniversary this June 2nd. I grew up out in West Tyler on Garden Valley Road near Fun Forest Park. Judy grew up on North Ellis
Well, first
Street.
West Bow.
Okay.
Yeah, behind my grandma and granddaddy's house.
You're right. Her grandfather and grandmother owned a large frame home with a garage apartment in the rear on West Bow Street, about a block, well, just past, going east, past Ellis Street to the north. Ellis Street to the north was the Nazarene Church back in those days, and it's now an Hispanic congregation.
Okay.
Her grandfather and grandmother's house was next to it, and it's still out there and belongs to the church. Judy was actually born as one of the first babies born at Mother Frances Hospital in 1937 while her mother and dad lived in that garage apartment.
Wow.
Judy's dad was a musician, was trained and taught by Doc Witt, and played in his bands and continued to play until his death in 1980. When she was born, he was earned their living by playing in a band, playing the tenor sax.
Okay.
And so her grandfather and grandmother were named Tunnel. His name was Joe Tunnel, and he was a agent for the Cotton Belt Railroad Company and worked in their agency building where the railroad track at one time crossed West Urban Street, just past Tyler Parks Service, in between there and the Woodrit building on West Urban Street. There was a two-story agent's office owned by the Cotton Belt there. And he was there, I know, in 1906 because he had a pocket watch that an engineer came through Tyler one time broke in 1906, and he's told me this many times, that he needed to borrow some money. He was broke, and he wanted to borrow $10, and Mr. Tunnel loaned him the $10, and he gave him his pocket watch to keep until he came back with the money, and he never came back. When Mr. Tunnel passed away many, many years later, after retiring, that pocket watch went to Judy's cousin whose name was Jody.
Who was named for him.
Named for him. And the watch still runs. And we just had a lot of ties to Tyler. And Judy and I love our town and have had a lot of fond memories here as teenagers and as young adults, and raised our 4 children here. And we lived in the country for 38 years, and 3 years, the 1st of March, we will have been back in town, downsized and less stress from things. And we're just enjoying life. Our health is relatively good, and we stay active and try to keep our health in good shape so that we can enjoy life.
Yes.
Well, did y'all first meet when you were in Roberts School?
I was.
Yes.
Judy was going into her, we met in August when Judy was going into her 9th grade year at Roberts, and I actually had moved from West Smith County and attended my first 9 years of school out in Van. And we moved into town, and I'm a year older, Jack, than you and Judy are. I had my sophomore year in 1951. Judy and I met at Pullman's roller skating rink in August of 1951.
Now, where was that located?
It's located down on Glenwood Boulevard to the almost due east of Loggins
I was just
Restaurant.
going to say,
On
yes.
the corner, that the last business that I'm aware of or remember being in there, it may still be there, was part of Story Right Printing Company.
I think so. There's a printing shop still there.
And he was a good skater and I was not. And he tried to teach me and I accused him a couple of times of making me fall. I couldn't keep up.
He may have. He probably wanted to pick you up.
I
Any
learned
excuse
to
to
do a
get
little
close.
better.
Anyway, I didn't know a lot of people in school when I began my sophomore year in 1951. And on October 23rd of that year, I received a pretty severe football injury while practicing,
Yeah,
playing
right
ball
down
at
here.
Tyler High School. And
Practice field.
I was brought to the hospital at Bryant Clinic, which sat where Austin Bank building that I'm looking out the window was in those days. And I was there for 2 or 2.5 weeks. And during that time, Judy came to see me on a Halloween night when it was freezing,
Cold.
rain, sleet, and snowing, and had on her toboggan icicles. And so she, the coach at our school, that the team I was playing on, the head coach was Ed Irons, who later became superintendent of schools here. And he came to see me, and I told him not to worry after having surgery that evening, the next day or two, that I'd be ready next year. And about a week after that, he came in with a half a gallon of ice cream and said, Jim, or Jimmy, I brought you this because I want to discuss with you that you got to determine to do something other than play football because your football playing days are over. I'd had a compound fracture, and got a bone infection, and took months and months and months to heal. So Judy stood by my side, taught me how to study, and I had the choice at midterm.
He actually graduated pretty good.
The choice at midterm to either graduate in 1954, because they sent a homeschool teacher to me, and when they found out I couldn't get out of bed and come back to school, the school system said, well, let you graduate at midterm, or you can take your whole fresh sophomore year over. And I guess because of Judy, I chose to do that. So we became steady daters, and probably within 2 years after that had made plans that one of these days we'll be married. And
Yeah.
so it worked out.
It's a neat story.
And we've been very blessed.
He got through 1 year of junior college, and I did too. But then he went, after we got married, in 56 then, he finished junior college at night school. And that's far as we got. But we made it.
We have 4 children, all 4 in 7.5 years, and they're all in their 50s now, and none of them live here. All of them graduated school here. Our oldest son, Mark, graduated from John Tyler in 1975 as salutatorian of his class. And then our oldest daughter, the next 3 children, we moved to the country and built us a home, not to change schools, but we ended up in Lee District. So the other 3 kids graduated in 1989, 90, and 92, 79, 80, and 82.
And you say in the country, where do you mean in the country?
We moved
From downtown.
We had a neighbor who had moved into Tyler, been transferred here with a corporation, and became our neighbors next door. And we decided after about 3 or 4 years in 1971 that we wanted to buy some land in the country and build, and we looked at several tracts. No connection to Noonday other than he actually heard about 2 tracts of land being for sale out in the country east of Lake Palestine on County Road 1104. We bought that land in 1972 in February. And waited 2 years for community water to get there, and our superintendent, when I was in the building business, was retiring. Miss Howell, the lady that I told you worked
Yes.
at Tyler Texas State Optical,
Yes.
her husband, one of our construction foremen, had agreed when he retired to build us a new home on that property. So he built that new home beginning April 15th when the water was finally put in on April 1st, and built it, and we moved out there in late August of 1974, and he moved across the road to the property for our neighbors, built their home, and we moved our neighbors out. And she's 85, almost 86 next month, and still living.
Still working
lives
in
on
her
the farm.
garden.
Still working
And quilting.
in the garden.
And who is she? She was
Her
your
name
neighbor?
is Mary Grabby,
Mary Graff.
and she was married to a gentleman named John Grabby. She grew up in Tyler. He grew up all over. His daddy was a long time ago Sears manager, and was pretty financially stable. John's dad. Sears stock in those days was very, very good stock on. And John had inherited it with a brother and a sister, all that stock, third. And she grew up, and her mother had a bookstore, used bookstore, on North Spring Street, about next to the Joy Theater.
The Joy
Jack, you
Theater.
remember where the Joy Theater was?
Yeah, where
Go
we
down
were
the
every
steps
Saturday
below the
afternoon.
millinery shop up on the square. She had that book shop and model shop, and that was her mother. What was Mary's mother's name? I'm sorry, I can't remember.
I can't
right now.
remember right now, of course.
And she's been dead for
Recognize
years.
it, I think.
When her mother passed away, Mary inherited that business, and she sold it to Jim Broussard, who opened the model shop and bookstore across from the Hubbard Building on the corner of University Place.
Okay.
That's where Jim Broussard got into I didn't know that until we met the Grabbys. But,
Okay.
she's told me about that. In fact, we were visiting her a couple of weeks ago, checking on her and the country, and she was talking about the bookstore and when they sold it to Mr. Broussard. That was on Irwin Street, and that sure does look like the Creole shop.
Didn't you
Okay.
eat from TP&L, didn't you eat
That's where
lunch?
that's where we used to have coffee. every
Coffee,
day.
okay, I knew you used to be over there a lot.
But
Well, let's
could
kind
be-
of put the picture up here where I can kind of see it. This is the one.
That building's still existing down on East
Yes,
Irwin.
that's the White Hole.
Oh,
Yeah,
White Plaza.
because that's not far from my house.
Yeah.
And then this is the Creole coffee shop you were saying at the Blackstone Hotel. Okay.
I worked with Texas Pine Light Company diagonally across the street from there, and that was our coffee shop. That and Cops Grill and the Citizens Bank, and also what was the pharmacy on the Broadway side? underneath the
Neil Simpson's, wasn't it?
Yes,
Neil Simpson's. They had the counter.
Had a
Yes.
counter and a booth.
I can remember
area.
being in there as a kid too.
Oh, yes.
Those
And is
were
it and how I wonder when all that closed down. You were there
I was
probably in the
that-
'60s.
I worked with Texas Pine Light from 1957 until 1965, and the last 3 years of that I traveled out of the division offices all over East Texas, and then I was transferred to Dallas. And the Blackstone was still in existence when I came back. Let's see, when I came back, Luther Kent, who was our accountant at the construction company I went with, was a Kiwanian, and he wanted me to become a Kiwanian, and I joined the Kiwanis Club. I'd been a JC until I had left and gone on the road into Dallas. And then when I got back, I became a Kiwanian, and we met in the ballroom of the Blackstone. That was in '65, and we met there until probably about between 1975 and '80 in the Blackstone. And I don't remember the exact date, but I remember the Blackstone being imploded. And there was a 806 parking garage that was on the
Rudy Jones.
Rudy Jones.
Remember him?
And Rudy was an ex-professional baseball player.
That's right. Who played for the Tyler Trojans is
Yes.
where.
And my brother next to me played for the Tyler Trojans.
No kidding. How neat.
After he, in 1946, when he got out of school, he joined the Air Force, which at that time had just become the U.S. Air Force. After World War II, they divided the Army Air Corps and the Navy Air Corps all and formed an Air Force. And he volunteered for the Air Force, and when he got back, he played professional baseball, beginning with the Tyler Trojans.
And my granddaddy had season tickets, so we got to go some. because of him.
Had box seat with season tickets, and he kept box score. He'd been long since retired, and we'd go sit with him and watch him play. And Frank Martin, who was a policeman here, had played professional baseball. They were a farm team for the Cincinnati Reds, and Frank was on his way down from the big leagues, and he came to Tyler and became a policeman and played for them. And he pitched a doubleheader out at what's now Max Carter Field one Sunday afternoon that we attended.
Yeah, we
And
were
he
there
pitched
quite a bit.
both games of the doubleheader and won both games. A
My
9-inning
goodness.
game and a 7-inning game. And I'd never seen that done before nor since, really.
It probably hasn't been.
Very, very popular star of the Cincinnati Reds named Roy McMillan began the year before with the Trojans that my brother began with them. And he began in 1947 or 48. And Roy went on to become the longtime, very good defensive shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds. And Bill made it up to what would now be probably Class A ball. And it was a pretty low-paying job in those days.
This is your brother?
Yes, like $100 a month, maybe. 95, I think, is what he actually started at, he told me.
Pretty good.
And they'd travel all night after a game to get to another league play the next day, maybe in time to have a little workout before they played, and eat on the way, and sleep on the bus. And as you went, this was a class, I believe they called it a Class B team then, or league. And
You're talking about Tyler
the
Trojans?
Tyler Trojans in those days.
Mhm.
And they played in the old East Texas ballpark that was later named after Mike Carter, an athlete here from Tyler High
Yes,
School.
yes.
And, but that's been a long time ago.
It has
The
been.
old rock bleachers and stadium is still out
Still
there.
out.
The one that-
I can remember going to those games when I was a kid with my dad,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he had a box seat out there also, and we'd go see him. Actually, some of the players rented a rent house and roomed together that Dad had back behind the home where I was raised.
Okay.
We had about 4 or 5 rent houses back there, and I remember one of them on Arnold Davis. Does that ring a bell? A center fielder?
No, it doesn't.
But I don't
Jack, but
remember
that-
which ones were there either. But that was exciting for me as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I had a
Baseball
cousin
player.
named Gerald Landrum that was playing on the same team. He played right field the first year, and Gerald was a real good ball player. He and Bill and my other brother and both my sisters all were graduated from Van High School, and Gerald was from Ben Wheeler, and we were very, very distant cousins. And he played right field, and he went on up, and as a very young man, he had diabetes and liked to drink a little bit too much, and he died very young.
Well, did Robert Rhodes go to Van at the time you were there?
Who?
Robert Rhodes, didn't he go?
Robert Rhodes' daddy was superintendent of school, and his older sister, who is Carolyn Stagner, Bobby Stagner's wife, who was in the insurance business here for years, and they're both still living. She taught school here, was Robert's only sister, an older sister. She was a couple of 3 years older than me, and Robert was probably 5 or 6 years younger than me.
Okay.
Carolyn taught some of our kids in
She
at
taught
Ramey.
at Ramey Elementary School.
And I'd forgotten that you went to TJC, because I was out there also.
Yeah,
Well, I'll go home and get my yearbook out.
we met quite a
I-
few people that came from out of town,
Yeah.
you know, that we didn't know till then, that we've run across. In
Well,
fact, one not long ago at a band reunion.
Oh, my.
Judy was a cheerleader at Roberts Junior High School, and at Tyler High School, and at Tyler Junior College.
Okay.
All three places.
But they didn't do all these flips and stuff that they did then.
No, the gymnastics.
No way. No way.
In those days, Jack, you'll remember, the gymnasium was the old building moved from Camp Fanning onto the north
Yes.
side of
It was old Gentry Gym.
Old Gentry Gym. And Dr. Prudhomme was playing at at that time. Joe
Yes,
Prudhomme, Chief Williams was playing from Big Sandy
Mhm.
down on the reservation.
I remember.
And I can't remember many more
I
of them without
recognized
looking.
Dempsey, I recognized up at
Yeah,
Van.
Dempsey
Dempsey
Sawyer.
Sawyer played for him.
And Chapman, there was Kelly Chapman.
Kelly
Okay.
Chapman, yes.
And he was that guy could jump like you could. He was playing center, I think, and he was short. But he had great leaping ability,
Yes.
if I remember.
And we followed TJC football and basketball for a long, long time. We haven't been in a while, but it was fun.
Martha Ingram, Rusty Ingram, Rusty
Yes.
Fletcher now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Dr. Fletcher.
she was at Tyler Junior College that 55, 56 year, and she was class secretary, and I was class president of the freshman class out there. And we see Rusty and Doc Fletcher pretty often. I until we moved to town, after I retired at 65 in 2001, I had always wanted to build or rebuild an old car, and so I began to do that as a hobby. And Doc Fletcher, his hobby, one of them at least, is rebuilding old Triumph cars.
He's got some pretty
He's got some
things.
pretty
Yeah.
ones.
Real. But when we moved to town, there was no place to put an old car in the barn.
Well, did you ever run into a fellow by the name of Davenport that did the cars for people that lived down at Mixon?
I've heard of him, but
Yes,
no, I
could
never
say
did meet
that.
him.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Graduated high school, I think, the year after we did. He lived in
Mention Randy
Mixon,
Lane again.
and he had Randy Lane,
Yeah.
Yes.
and he had a automobile paint business, and one of the old pickups that I restored, he completely repainted it all original for me. And
Oh,
he actually had his business out on the Dixie Drive, past W.C. Edwards' home. He had a home and a paint shop out there, and was a deputy sheriff too. And he,
Out by the airport we're talking about?
yeah, go out to Greenbrier Road and turn and go down to the Y Dixie Drive and go over just over the
Yeah.
hill. And
And
the
WC
Edwards
is
place-
Welby.
Yes.
It's Welby, yeah. Was a
And,
good friend.
And just past that house, Randy had a small home and a paint shop out behind it. And this was a Ford, 1965 Ford pickup, and it was a custom cab, and he painted the outside the original Ford blue, and inside, when he repainted it for me, it turned out that it had two different colors, and he recognized it when he started painting, and he got both those colors and put them back exactly like they were. And then sent it to an upholstery shop that was owned by the husband of a lady named Daisy Breeden that graduated high school with us. And she married a guy named Jake Taylor. And he had an upholstery shop next to the old Coca-Cola plant where T.C. Harvey opened his dealership when they built the new Coca-Cola plant. He opened Harvey Pontiac.
Harvey Pontiac, yes.
And this, he redid the upholstery in that old pickup, and the back of the seat of that pickup, and this was in 1980, and the old back of that pickup, and that was the one we rebuilt for Brian, our youngest son,
Yeah.
had the original plastic with the Ford emblem embedded that was still in perfect shape, and he got all original, Randy got him to put all original upholstery and use that back pattern in that pickup. And our youngest son drove it through high school and through his senior year at A&M.
At A&M.
So,
Well, and Lois Breeden was one that went to school with us.
well, Daisy,
And, yeah,
and
And-
Lois was married to Daisy's brother.
brother, there you go.
Lois.
Knew there was a
It
connection.
wasn't Lois Breeden. What was her last name? Lois what? He told me that Bill McMahon was not going to be able to make it. You remember Bill? I'm
I
sure.
remember Bill.
He
It just-
married Gail Chadwick, who was a couple of years younger than us, and she's having knee surgery just before,
Okay.
and already had it scheduled. So.
Well, Bill was raised just down the street from where I was raised.
And
And
Dolores,
Dolores, his
was his
sister.
older sister.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she was older, wasn't she?
Yeah, uh-huh.
What was the blonde-headed girl's name that lived to the east of you about a block? Did you know H.D. Hassel, Mr. Hassel?
Is this the
Elizabeth
Sabins?
Sabins.
Elizabeth Sabins.
Yes, I couldn't remember her last
Yeah,
name.
she was a couple of years younger, wasn't
Yes,
she?
she
Or
was
one
younger.
or 2 years younger.
At least one, maybe two. Maybe
Okay.
two.
I remember I had a date with her one time.
Is that right? Judy and I we are active in two organizations here. We're active and have been for 7 or 8 years with Welcome Home Soldiers, welcoming home soldiers as they come from wherever.
To the airport,
the
and the
airport,
group that we
they
see on
need us.
TV.
Yes.
And we're also members of the Patriot Guard Riders. We don't ride the motorcycles, of course, but we work with the flag captains and help them set up the flags at the memorial services, both at the funeral home or church or at the cemetery. And a lady not 2 or 3 years ago joined the Welcome Home Soldiers, and she said, "My name is Sarah
Maples.
Maples." And I know her current name.
Her current name,
Was,
I can't remember, but she was Sarah Maples.
yes, and I'll
Was
think
she
of that.
was she in our class?
She was
She
2
was
years back.
younger.
Okay.
And Judy and I both recognized her, but couldn't remember much. And when we were looking in our alcalde after Milton called me about the reunion, we saw Sarah's picture as a sophomore when we were seniors, and Judy and her were in the Spanish club, and they went to Monterrey, Mexico over the Christmas holiday that year when she was a sophomore and Judy was a senior. The Spanish club
Went
did.
to Monterey.
Went
You
to
wouldn't do
Monterey.
that now, would you?
Oh, no. Dr. Travis, David Travis was the Spanish teacher.
I'll be darned.
And, should have stayed with it. But then, Jack, they didn't teach you to speak. It was just the written word, you know.
Okay.
But now, I mean, occasionally I recognize a word.
Well, my current wife taught German in high school.
Oh,
I say my current, I've only had 2, by the way.
We have a granddaughter who's a double major. Mark's daughter, she was salutatorian when she graduated at Richardson High School in AP courses, and she's a double major in Japanese and English. And
Oh,
she
my.
spent 3.5 years as soon as she graduated with a bachelor's in Japan, teaching Japanese children
English.
And she's now back at Lake Highlands High School in Dallas teaching teaching Japanese to the high school kids.
What a valuable thing to know in this world. That and Chinese would be.
Well, she is taking a course in some kind of correspondence to
In
try to
Mandarin.
get a certification in Chinese.
Chinese.
The symbols are similar,
Oh.
but they're not the same.
She must be very bright.
She got a certification to be an
sweet
interpreter
girl.
to work for the Japanese government in the United States. And that certification, she had to memorize 860-something symbols and pass the certification exam.
Wow.
And she says it's really not all that difficult.
Now, how long did you work for Texas Power and Light?
I worked for Texas Power and Light from 1957 until 1965. I went to work with them. Didn't have to have an engineering degree to be an engineer with them in those days. And when I got out of high school, when Judy and I first got married, the reason we could only go one night on a trip, and rather than going to New Orleans that her grandfather had
Granddaddy
set
paid
up
for New Orleans, but we didn't get there.
I had to be at work on Monday morning at 7 o'clock for Dowell Oil and Gas Well Servicing Company, and the only job I had. And we graduated and actually didn't graduate. We got our grades on Friday, had our wedding rehearsal that evening out from TJC, and were married on Saturday evening. So I worked there, and then I had already given my notice that I was going back to school, and they had a place out by J.A. Harrelson North American Van Lines. They had a business location there, and they had offices down the Citizens Bank for their regional manager, and had offices Tyler, Kilgore, Bossier City, and El Dorado, Arkansas for this division.
Is this an oil well servicing company?
We were fracking oil wells and gas
Okay.
wells in those days, and every time I hear them talk about this new procedure
Procedure.
of fracking, we called it sand fracturing, and we did
Okay.
it with high gravity oils and chemicals and
Okay.
sand. And I was a pump operator, and when we found out she was expecting our first child, I knew that I needed to work, so I applied for a job with General Electric Company and worked from 1965 until 1956 to 1957 with the local General Electric plant. I was there when the first units rolled off the plant, about 30 days. And I was in quality control out there, and there were, at that time, 4 of us in quality control answering to the engineering department head, Mr. Hank Gary, who had moved here with GE and is buried here now. And in 1957, I had decided that I didn't like working in that plant, although I had a pretty good job. And I applied for several jobs and applied with Texfire and Light, and they hired me in their overhead distribution engineering department. And we were down on Broadway and Locust Street. And then I was fortunate enough, Jack, to be chosen out of about 3,200 employees, one of 60 employees in 1959, to be taken in and trained in their training facilities over a period of time, and then refresher courses for several years, to present the American free enterprise system to anybody that would listen to us. Texas Power and Light Company had a president named WWW, 3 initials, Lynch. And he was the president and CEO and board chairman at the time for Mr. Carpenter, who was emeritus board chairman in Dallas. And we were a controlled monopoly. But Mr. Lynch was a staunch believer in the American free enterprise system. And we were given,
Except for his company.
well, I still, from indoctrination, feel that there's some industries that probably should, and we might be better off with a controlled monopoly. But that's another after that.
Yes.
But
That's something for us to share when we get together over
Yes.
Coca-Cola and a glass of wine.
We were given the opportunity to travel anywhere in the United States at company expense and given compensating time off
Wow.
to present anybody that would have us make a talk to them. And I got some traveling in, and I was able to meet with a lot of neat people. You know, church Sunday school classes, the National Secretaries Association here in Tyler was one of them. Of course, our division manager was secretary was a member of the National Secretaries Association. I'm sure that's one of the reasons we got that. No, she was a sweet, sweet lady. But we met with a lot of companies, and they chose so many people from their general offices in Dallas, and so many from each of their 4 division offices: Tyler, Waco, Garland, and not Garland, Irving, and Sherman. And we were advertised and offered by every employee to talk with anybody that listened. Back in those days, everyone was as frightened as we are today of the radical Islamists, if you'll recall.
Yeah, they were frightened of something. It was communism, wasn't it?
was
And
communism.
socialism as well. We
Communism
always
was
seem to have something we're scared of
Yeah.
Yes.
for some darn
Yes.
reason. I can't.
And it was really, that's when the water tower down on next to the
Where we live.
Goodman
Oh, the one downtown.
Museum. The concrete water tower was actually a survival deal in the bottom of it with supplies
Yeah,
in
they
it
had
for us, you and I, if we needed to get in there and
Bomb
have a place
shelter.
to stay in case of radiation. A bomb shelter in the base of that thing. There were several of them around.
Probably wouldn't have worked, but they thought it would.
They thought it would.
And the radiation probably, you've got to have air, and usually they didn't have the filters and all of that in those.
I had a pretty good,
But I'd forgotten that that was over there.
Yeah.
had a pretty good course of time there for me when I was taught a lot about totalitarian government in comparison to the free economic system and the benefits of the free economic system.
Yes.
I'm very thankful to have grown up in the United States and in Texas and in Tyler because we grew up at a good time, Jack.
We did, and I'm
Yes.
thankful to still be
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
I am too.
I think this is a great town, and we're just fortunate.
Yes, we are.
And it's been very good to me.
Judy and I were dating, and after we had children, you remember them closing off the west half of the square before the old courthouse was torn down? And even after, I think, and having a Halloween carnival.
Okay, yes.
You knew where Whistler's Corner was on Broadway and Irvin, didn't you? Where the boys stood and whistled at the girls when they made the
See,
square.
I
and
never
went out
did
the window.
such as that. I was out of that loop. I missed out on a lot of good times.
That is where we stood when we were first married there with Barbara Means and Burley Lamb, and waited I don't know how long from the Tyler Theater all the way around the corner and all the way down nearly that whole block there for Elvis.
First
His
movie.
movie.
Misting Rain.
Yes,
And I never
it
went
was
to
not
see
even
another
nice
Elvis
weather.
movie.
Well,
Oh,
But it was,
I don't know.
you remember do you remember when Sears Roebuck was down on East Ferguson Street and it became the American Legion Hall where the kids in high school used to have a lot of the high school parties?
oh, that's where Sears was before. I remember the American Legion Hall, and I'd
That's
forgotten.
where Sears was.
Did they have kind of a home catalog store there instead of a big?
Yes.
Well, they had a home catalog and farm store across from the
Yeah,
wagon yard
yeah.
where the bail bond places are. And they moved to to where they were when they moved to the mall in the Lindsay building on the basement, first floor and mezzanine of the Lindsay building next to the Fair Foundation building. And
Used to order stuff a lot.
yeah.
See, I didn't remember the catalog store as being there. I remember the American Legion being there and going and having dances there.
Yeah,
We
and I
also-
probably didn't use the catalogs that early,
Yeah.
but
When
I
I-
used to.
lived up near Van, and we'd come to town shopping in the summertime, and it was a real treat to go in the old Montgomery Rewards building where the parking garage is. It actually
Yes,
faced
I
where the
remember
ceiling
that.
fans were there. That was
Yeah.
the only cooling we had, if you remember.
Yes.
But that was really neat.
And you worked in the Kay Woolens building in
One
high-
Christmas.
Yeah, and did they have fans in? What I remember
No,
about
they didn't
that,
have
it had where you paid them down and the little thing went up to the second floor, sent your change back down. That's what I remember about Kay Woolens.
Had a trolley. The cashiers were up in office on the mezzanine. And you had to pull the trolley cable to
Yeah.
get the cash in a little cup up
Go
with the
up to
ticket,
them.
and they'd send the change back to the customer for us to give to the customer.
It's funny the
I
things you
worked there
remember.
during the late fall and Christmas, I think of our junior year, and you worked at Marion Smith's.
I worked at Myron Smith's
wrapping
in
Christmas.
the gift wrapping during Christmas.
Oh, my.
It's been a long time ago.
Judy and I were reminiscing about where we used to eat in high school. Of course, the high school pharmacy had cheese sandwiches and cherry lime cokes and all this. And then there was Was it Gary's
I
Pharmacy?
went to Gary's Pharmacy
On
every day at
Broadway.
noon because they had what was it?
Steak
Some kind of steak sandwiches with a little thin meat.
I
What
know.
they call them?
They were in,
Chop
they were in
steak
the ground
sandwiches.
floor in
Yes.
front of where Broadway Economy Freight
mhm,
Company was on Broadway. And then there
Yep, I
was
had to cross
Turner
Broadway.
Burgers. You remember Turner
Oh,
Burgers?
yes.
Turner, that was
They
On
were
the
good.
corner
real
of-
cheap and they were real salty and had onions in them and
Yeah,
they beat them
pretty-
down to
He
death.
was on the corner of, Spring and Front Street.
Yeah, or between
there.
Broadway and Spring and
Yeah.
that little strip
That little
center.
strip.
Yeah.
And that's when Front Street did not cross the railroad tracks. Remember, that was, it
Yeah,
ended
it
there.
quit.
And it was not a busy street. We'd run over there.
In 1958, an engineer named Everett Lamb and I had worked on the extension of Front Street from Beckham all the way to what's now the Loop. And we had a ribbon cutting out there in something like October or November, and Governor Preston Smith was here for the ribbon cutting, turning on those mercury vapor lights on both sides of the deal. Everett and I were there, and we had our pictures taken, and when they flipped the lights on, because we designed the construction of those lights. And
Okay,
I-
when you were with Texas Power and
Texas
Light.
I was with Texas Power and Light, and that was in 1950. It was either it was 58. I'd been there about a year when I went with them in 57.
Yeah, you went in the fall of '57 when Mark was a baby.
And then I left them and came back and went in the building business in '65 with Percy Andrews, and was in the construction business till 1970 in February, and they could no longer continue to finance me, so they hired me.
They put you out of business so they could hire you.
Well, they were very good to me. In fact, Jack, I consider myself blessed because no matter where we worked, it seems like somebody every day of my life has really gone out of their way to help me in some manner, and that's what you really remember.
Well, you deserved it. I mean, you were that capable and you're just that fine of a person now. That's part of what was going in the package.
Somewhere in there, you had the appraisal business.
Well, that was, after going with Tyler Savings,
Yeah.
Bob and I opened the Energy Systems of East
uh-huh.
Texas, and I went on the board with First Southwest, and then I went into the appraisal business and had my own appraisal company. I was in competition with John,
Yes, okay.
and we had that appraisal business from 1983 through 1990.
I went with you nearly every day and held the end of the tape, wrote down whatever he said.
And
I didn't learn much, but I was familiar with a little of it.
And then when they closed us at First Southwest, I'd only been with them as their president for 17 and a half months. And they closed us down on November 30th of 1989. And Jack, the Financial Reform Act that President Bush, which we all referred to as FIREA, was mailed to us in July of 1989, and we were delivered by UPS and told it would be delivered to us at about 7:30 in the morning to all of the associations in town, and I guess banks too, by UPS. It was in excess of 600 pages.
Oh my goodness.
And they changed regulations on us very, very concisely in a lot of areas. And one of them was that we had to mark everything to market value.
And with the decline in the value of housing,
Everybody's market value on residential and commercial loans. Residential market was down probably 25% from 3 years earlier. And commercial market was down probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 30-35%, and raw land was down 50%. And depending on your loans and when they were made, they were underwater many times with what was owed as to market value. And they made us, and they made us
And they
take
made you lower
laws.
the loan value down to no more than what the value of the land was.
We were making in those days, in the 70s, the first loan that I sat in on a loan committee meeting with Tyler Savings and Loan in 1970 with the loan executive committee, which met every week. And I won't tell you who the individual was, but a gentleman that was one of the forming people of Tyler Savings, which bought Hill Home Savings and got insurance of accounts and became Tyler Savings, was, you know him real well, and I know who he was. And we went to this loan committee meeting, and there was an application for a $120,000 loan on a $200,000 house in those days, which was pretty
big.
good
Very
size
good
loan.
loan, but that was a very good loan with that
And
much
this
equity.
particular director and on the loan committee said, and he wanted that amount of loan, or the family did. And this director said, absolutely not. If a man is buying a house and has to borrow more than $100,000 on it, I can't vote for the loan.
How the world has changed.
And
Well, now this was probably a tradition because Hill Home Savings and Loan had financed small houses all over in East Tyler, hadn't he?
he hadn't been on the board of Hill Home, though.
He had not, though? That's strange that he had
He was
that.
one of the new board members. And anyway, we made the loan. At that particular time, I didn't have a vote, but everybody but him voted for it. And he didn't get upset, but he just thought that if a guy was going to spend that kind of money on a house, he ought to have more cash.
More cash than...
And Jack, that wasn't a whole lot different than the thinking of your father and my folks and Judy's folks. You know, if you got to borrow more than it's worth, you don't need it. That was sort of a lot of people didn't go a lot in. They didn't have credit cards in those days.
Yeah, but my dad aggressively borrowed, though, to buy land.
Okay, he knew that.
At one time he did, but he had a good income stream
Yeah.
because of his law practice, and he couldn't make any other investments work out other than the land, and that was always there.
Yes, that's
And
what
so-
made the difference. It was there.
Did your dad practice with the Geralds?
Yes, Willis, the senior, not the Willis. They're all
Yeah.
dead now.
Yeah.
And Dewey Lawrence and he were partners for the
Okay.
longest.
Well, see, Mr. Lawrence was part owner of, Dewey was part owner of Hill Home Building and Loan. He had
Okay.
Samar Hill Sr. and can't remember who the third person was, and he was an attorney. I'll think of that in a few minutes.
Don Gwynn, maybe?
No,
No?
it was one of the old,
Lem Hutchins? No.
them was with Citizens Bank.
Yeah.
Terry Graham.
Oh, okay.
Terry Graham, Samar Hill Sr., and Dewey Lawrence formed Hill Home Building and Loan.
I'll be.
And that's Terry and J.A.'s father.
Yes.
And I saw where Terry had sold all that property. He sat all these years out across the high school administration building, or he's building a facility out there. I saw some
They're
zoning
doing
changes.
something.
Well, it was in the paper where
Yeah.
they changed the zoning and got it, and he had a client that was going to buy it. He said if he could get the zoning changed.
Well, that's good.
And that's going to that'll make that area a much better appearance than it's been forever.
When you left Hill Home Savings and Loan, where?
I went in business with. I never worked for Hill Home. It had
Oh,
already
it
gotten.
come to be the new name, wasn't it?
The The Federal Home Loan Bank, in order to get insurance of accounts, required that they take the family name out of that. They had a Texas Capital Stock Company. It was chartered as a Texas Capital Stock Financial Organization, a savings and loan. And but in order to get insurance of accounts, they were required to change the name and pick up a new name, and therefore Tyler Savings and Loan was born. And at that point, it's when they hired Torrey, and that's when they moved into the building over on Beckham, between the hospitals, next to just north of Dr. Vaughn's. And that's apparently a building that John may have been showing them or something. I don't know.
No, that was, we didn't own that building.
You didn't own that building?
No.
Oh, that's the
No,
one
that's
they-
where they went as an alternative.
As an
Yeah.
alternative.
Because
And they moved into the building on Broadway and 8th, in October of '69, and I went to work with them in February of 1970. And Jack, you were talking about the deceased coffee clutch people. When I went to work with Tyler Savings and Loan, the original employees that I went to work with out there in 1970, there's me and one lady living. Every employee, and there were some younger than me. I was one of the younger ones, but Judy and I realized that about 2 years ago.
I think at First Federal Savings and Loan, when they were loaning us money, I think that bunch is all dead and gone
Yeah.
now too.
We knew Gerald Free from conventions and buying and selling loans when he came here when Bob Allen retired. Mr. Allen.
And Kay, Tori's wife, had the antique
Laundry
stuff.
shop.
Yeah, even
Right there in
before
the
she
Y.
had the London,
Yeah.
the lobby in that building, she kept.
she had it.
Oh, it was just always so pretty. And every once in a while, they'd come in and kind of change things a little bit as far as the seating, you know, away from the tellers and
Now, is this
everything.
on 8th Street you're talking
Uh-huh.
about, when they were there? Of course,
Always.
she was right across the street.
Yes, she was.
And
she just
had
kept.
that import shop. She went to
For a long time.
England and imported antiques. I think.
We really had some, that building was very
It
well
was,
decorated.
it was very pretty.
Oh, I
It
bet.
really
It was
was.
very well. She was Spec Lowry's only daughter.
Okay.
He was with the Sproul Potter Lowry firm.
Okay.
And
I
his
never
brother,
heard anything but Speck. I never
Oh,
knew his name.
I did, but everybody knew him as Spec. He had a brother named Tom Lowry that was also an attorney, but he was in the oil and gas business and ended up moving out to Midland during the Permian Basin times when they discovered that field out there. And he worked in the land business out in Midland as an attorney.
Well, you know, you were mentioning about the fracking
Uh-huh.
as being new. They think now. Also, they think that horizontal drilling is relatively new, but that's been here when we were kids. They were directional drilling in the East Texas
Yes.
oil field illegally.
Used to call it whipstocking.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
So,
Oh, goodness. We,
yeah, we had a lot of people we know that were. I don't know where they went to prison, but they certainly got prosecuted.
a bunch of them
Yes,
did for
yes.
directional drilling.
That's right.
And our oil and gas law apparently is quite different than a lot of states are. Mineral rights are not kept in a lot of the states when you sell the property. Our oldest son and a partner have 2 energy businesses in Houston. He's a chemical engineer and has his master's in international business from University of Dallas. And he and an ex-Titan submarine commander, lieutenant commander, spent 13 years in the Navy, formed these 2 companies, one of them and then a second one, the first one 6 years ago. They travel and work internationally in the energy business. In fact, he's in the Congo
He's
right
in the
now.
Congo right now.
Oh my goodness.
Be
Been
glad
down
when
there.
Saturday gets here.
Yeah, he's supposed to be on Saturday. They're working, he, interestingly enough, does some technical analysis and work for an engineering firm here in Tyler. And he's worked on with some stuff for the Hunt Oil Company and that they've done down in Maparner. And He's gone to Kyrgyzstan with them, with the Hunt Oil Company. They bought part of a shale gas field, several wells in one, and Mark went over and did their due diligence for them when they bought it.
Well,
Or his company did.
You know, one thing that'd be interesting on this tape, because y'all were dating all through high school.
Mm-hmm.
What, not getting personal, but where did y'all go on dates, and what did you do back in that? Because that, to the kids now, it'd be totally different.
It would.
We would go, we'd have a lot of Winnie roast. We'd go on hay rides. Remember the hay rides
Yeah.
from high school? Samar Hill and Gus States and Cade
Yeah.
Lumber Company would let somebody have one of those bobtail trucks and load it with hay. And
3 or
we'd
4
go
of
to
the churches did that regular.
Love's Lookout
Yeah.
and Tyler State Park
Yeah.
and Samar Hill Lake out on the Chandler Highway where the plane fell in the lake during World War II. We'd go to the drive-in movie and to the movies, and during our, particularly our junior and senior year in high school, there was almost every Saturday night there was a party, a dance that was sponsored by groups of kids
Yeah.
at the American Legion
the American
Hall,
Legion.
the Elks Lodge, or the Cedars of Lebanon, and the kids would go there and quite well chaperoned, if you'll recall, and so we'd do that a lot.
Although we didn't dance a lot. Now, he had that bad leg, and
From
we
that high
just
school
never did dance a lot. He wore built-up shoes for 43 years before they worked on his leg.
They did, the bone healed at an angle,
Yeah,
and
and it
it
was
was
just a-
3/4 of an inch shorter, and Dr. Schreiber, the only orthopedic surgeon in Tyler in 1951 was Dr. Freiberg, located on the corner of University Place and Broadway, just this side of the First Christian Church,
Okay.
and a Jewish MD. So pigeon-toed Jack, he could hardly step over his feet. He was an orthopedic surgeon. He and Dr. Madison Lee and Dr. Bradford, Sid Bradford, did the surgery, and I was in a cast from my right toes to my left knee and up above my waist, flat on my back for 3.5 months. And then I had to have a special brace that was built for me, and couldn't get it to heal. I got an infection in the bone marrow. And so we had, even in Roberts, the year you graduated from Roberts, there were 2 or 3 Friday night problems.
Yeah,
And I'd go sit and watch y'all
Mhm.
dance because I couldn't walk without crutches.
Well, do y'all remember Tri-High and High
Oh,
clubs
yes.
in high school? Were
Yes.
y'all part of any of that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and see, there was a council from the different clubs of the girls and the guys, and they had a lot of those dances. I remember being on it. John Schofield, I think, was kind of the leader of that council.
And, I have, in fact, our girls are coming to get some of our furniture where we're overloaded. And we have a triple dresser that was full, except the top 2 drawers, of picture albums and pictures and a bunch of stuff. But I found a picture where several of us girls had sponsored a dance there at the American Legion. And even though James and I didn't dance much, it was just what you did, you know.
Well, in your
that's just-
senior year, didn't they groups of people got together and sponsored dances?
Yes,
And
they
That's
did.
one of the things that happened, and
Yes.
they would invite, was it just seniors or everybody in school?
They'd invite
A lot of
a
people.
lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
I think so.
It was always crowded at the,
In fact, Judy's got a book that she put, no telling how many invitations that were sent. And it named, they'd pencil in or ink in who your date was, and who was giving it was printed in it. And you kept a lot of the corsages or flowers one in it.
yeah, the little napkins with names on, you know, the names of whatever.
If you're planning to get rid of those items, this may be a place that's interesting.
I was just
Okay,
fixing to say,
okay.
you know,
Because
we know
it's-
right where those are
Yeah,
too.
You know, that would be real
Well,
interesting.
and our
Did
kids-
y'all ever go to Weber's after you had?
Oh,
yes.
We'd go around the square and go to Weber's and turn around and go back around the square and whistle at the girls. And
He didn't
Honk
do,
or-
he
And
didn't
then
do much
along
whistling
came
when I
Well,
was
he or,
ready.
I meant to say, he didn't whistle at girls surely when you had Judy.
I'm sure he did it when I wasn't with him.
We
But we drove a lot. My goodness, you couldn't afford the gas now for all the
No.
driving we did.
the other place we used to eat in high school was the Chuck Wagon down by Hudson Oil Company.
Okay, now where was the chuck wagon? I remember a chuck wagon.
Okay, it was down on Glenwood, just north of Front Street, right there, north of what's now
The,
a service station.
yeah.
Across the street from
The
Barbie
E-
Thompson Motor Company.
Okay. that
It was a Chuck wagon. It was a little building built like a wagon, and they had Frisco burgers. And
Frisco
when we'd
burgers
eat there,
were good.
Judy always ate the Frisco burger. It was a special sauce and chili and hamburger meat, and Judy loved them, and I liked them too. And she'd eat those and Fritos.
Yeah, and it wasn't very expensive.
No,
no,
it
very
wasn't.
inexpensive.
It wasn't.
I can remember if we spent $1 on our date for something to eat,
Yeah.
we felt extravagant. I mean,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
We really
And now they take people in their dates and, you know,
It's expensive.
if they go to the senior prom and things, they will
We used to play miniature
rent a
golf.
limousine or something, you know,
Yes, yes.
and have the show, you know.
Judy and I would play a lot of miniature golf out at Fun Forest, which was real near my
Okay.
home. We were only 2
Yeah,
blocks
he lived,
west of there.
yeah,
And
out that way.
she used to always beat me. I don't think I ever beat her playing miniature golf.
That's why she liked for you to take her.
And Wayne and Gene Sudduth, Roy Sudduth, who graduated from high school with us, older brother. He had a brother named Doy, who was a couple of years older than us, that married Doris Brown.
Doris Brown,
who graduated
that
from high school.
graduated
Okay,
with us.
okay.
Yes.
Their older brother, Wayne, and his wife managed the golf course out there for years for the city, and sold the snow cones with all the different flavors, you know, and we played a lot of
And the
miniature golf.
softball played right across the road there, you
Did
know.
y'all go swimming at Fun
Oh,
Forest?
Yes.
I
you
wish
bet.
I had a quarter for every time I walked down Bow Street to the swimming pool. You know, I walked everywhere I went, because we had
And
one
it was
car.
safe.
Yes, it was safe. We walked to the square lots of times, you know. Just,
Theron Pickle and Mamie Shirley and one of the Hope boys, and I don't remember who all used to be out there when we were in high school, practicing all the time for the Tyler swim
team. Yeah,
And you know, that was an
Real
Olympic
good,
size
real
swimming
good
pool when it
swimmers.
was built.
I never was that good, but I liked to splash.
And Patsy Trant, I bet, was
Yes,
Yes,
out
Pat
there.
yes,
Trent
she
was one
was.
of them.
She was.
And you know, she and Lee passed away pretty quickly of each other, didn't they?
Yeah,
They really
Yeah.
did.
and they had divorced, hadn't they?
Not to my knowledge.
Well,
I
I
thought,
don't know. I
I
really
thought
don't.
they were divorced.
I
They
really
could
don't.
be, but I don't remember it. I used to see Lee pretty often.
He was a real good friend of Mike McDonald's, who was
Yes.
an
Okay.
acquaintance friend
Yes,
of mine.
yes, I remember
What was
that.
Mike's sister's name?
Yeah, that's who
Elizabeth?
I was thinking of.
The tall girl,
Yeah,
Yeah.
wasn't it Elizabeth? Mary Elizabeth?
Mary
Mary,
McDonald.
yes,
Yeah,
that's
Mary
what it,
McDonald.
Mary Elizabeth
Mary
it was, you're right.
Elizabeth,
That-
okay.
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Mhm.
Kay Howard lived out in Highland Park. Remember, she was a year behind us.
Okay, yes.
And she and Gary Eichner used to date in high school. You remember Gary?
I run into him every now and then.
His health is going down.
We do,
Oh, I usually see him at Sam's when I would see him,
uh-huh.
and his health is going down.
Yes, he and his wife bought one of the retirement duplexes or quadruplexes
Was
or
it-
townhomes.
Was it at
that,
Meadowlake?
Meadowlake.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was built out on Quentin Chambliss'
Quentin
farm.
and Billy Chambliss' farm out there.
And you know, Dolly Wood, whose mother and daddy and Judy's mother and daddy were close friends, and Judy and her were born 3
3
days
days apart.
and
We
friends all their life.
known each other all our
Married
lives.
Edwin,
I hadn't talked
Gary's
to him
older
in a
brother.
while.
And we came home on Halloween night when Van asked me to their reunion for the 54 class last fall, and Gary had called me at home and left word for me to call back in a number, and he never did call me back. And I called him and he wouldn't answer his phone, so I called Dolly, and she said that he will not answer that cell phone, and I'll give you another number, and if you don't get him, call me back. So I did, and I called him, and he said, you know, we're not pleased out here, and we've just given them 30 days notice that we're going to be moving out, and we're going to buy a townhome in town. And somebody told me you had bought a townhome, and I said, well, we did downsize, Gary, but we are leasing. We made the decision consciously, without our kids' help even, that we were going to divest ourselves of all of the things. Jack, Judy, and I determined of our own, and this is not for everybody, no matter what we have, whether we earned it, we needed it, just got it, somebody gave it to us, everything that we have has a responsibility.
You're right.
And I got rid of all those stresses. and I think I'll live an extra 5 years. I really do.
I bet you do because of it.
We
And
still
another
had.
thing, everything we have, we think is ours. It's
No,
not ours.
no,
It's just on loan.
Just for now.
Just for
Yeah,
now. I
yeah.
mean, we get so serious over it all, but it's just.
And our legacies, Jack, are going to be our
I'm
family
sorry.
and our close friends.
That's it.
Well, now,
Our families and our close friends.
Yeah.
6 months from, if something happens that afternoon, 6 months from now, the people that, friends and close family, are the only one that will think about me very often.
yeah, and there are not too many people that we're really that close to.
We really
Well,
are.
that's true. That's true. And
You know,
This is the only thing that we regret moving from the country in.
with friends
Our
out there.
neighbors.
yes, our neighbors, friends, and neighbors.
When
out
we
there.
bought our
we try to
acreage
keep up, but
And built our house, we could stand in our yard and only see 3 houses.
Well, see, whenever Tiffany told me that who this was, and I said, well, they live in the country. She said, no, they live in
not
town.
anymore.
We
I
lived
said,
out there 38
I
just
thought it
on-
was Lindale, but I was getting you mixed up with Phil Breakbill.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Phil just passed away, didn't he? I'm sure we saw in the
Yes,
paper that
I'm
Phil
pretty
passed
sure
away.
we saw that. I'm
We
pretty
still
sure.
take the Tyler Morning paper for
We
2
do.
reasons.
Sometimes I have to
For the
think.
obituaries, and Judy works crossword puzzles.
This is what my wife does.
Really?
Yes.
She works the crossword
I like
puzzles.
crossword puzzles, the word puzzles.
She says it's going to keep her brain going.
that, you know, I hope it works that
Maybe
way.
the same thing.
I do hope
And
it
my-
works that
and,
way.
And Janelle is 7 years younger than I am,
Okay.
and so, but
When the kids grew up and the empty nest came about, because they all left
I
home
didn't
pretty soon after
Quite
high
know
school.
what to do with
The
myself.
boys both left immediately when they graduated in May. They both went to College Station in September, and our daughter had gotten married that summer, and the summer she did, and our youngest daughter was out on her own.
Yeah.
And Judy had not worked at, I don't say she'd never worked, I did that once.
I told him I didn't get to retire.
When I told him,
There was no retirement.
and I told somebody, oh, she didn't work. And she said, well, I'll tell you what, you change with me and stay home with 4 kids. So, but anyway, I had a sister-in-law who's deceased, and my oldest brother who was killed in an accident on the job in 1975, and his wife. And Judy and her were real close. And she began to paint after his death.
Yeah.
And she
Colleen got me started.
got Judy started, and Judy began to take painting lessons. And the first one that she painted, it was really good, Jack. And she painted for years, and that probably saved us hundreds of dollars in doctor bills.
well, guess what my wife does? She paints.
Okay. Okay. I was.
Not the house.
Yes, but no. Well, I did. I painted kitchen cabinets and bathroom cabinets and stuff
I was
like
painting on my house this morning. That was.
that.
We have told them that they can have our house again on the spring tour in 2016. So I'm getting ready for
Yeah.
2016. I'm painting, and I have a lot of painting done that I've hired too.
See, that's out there. We had we were down to 10 acres because we'd sold part of our land, but didn't have cows anymore, but there was still fences and had to have somebody come and either cut hay or mow for us because the tractor was gone by then, and we were still mowing. I pushed and he mowed on the riding one for like nearly 2 acres. Got to be
Were
too
you
much.
someplace close to Kelly out there, or the old
No,
center?
no, we were, you know where Big Eddie Road and FM 2661 crosses?
Noonday store.
Noonday
Yeah, I
Store.
know where the noonday
The Blue
store.
Store, yes.
If you go west on Big Eddie Road to FM 2661, which comes from Dallas Highway all the way around to 155 where Brookshire's is, we were east of 2661 away from the lake on County Road 1104 out west of Noonday.
Okay, 1104 is the one that, doesn't it go north and south through there?
It
Yeah.
starts there. Do you know where Brookshire's 3B
It starts
stables are?
there,
Yes,
doesn't it?
yes.
And then it goes on up to 64.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We lived, as the crow flies, about a half a mile west of Mr. W.T. Brookshire's old 3B Stables ranch, where his,
And that was 1133, that
That
road,
was
and
1133.
1104 turned off of
and
it.
it runs 1133 east and
Yes,
west.
east and
ours
west,
north
yes,
south.
and ours was north and south.
And we were just about 2,000 feet too from 2660.